Hey guys, what is up? It's Dusty here and welcome back to another crypto video. I'm shocked, literally shocked. That's what the CTO of Ripple just said over on his Twitter. And to be honest with you, after reading this thread, I'm pretty confused. I'm not so sure what to tell you guys except for this is crazy. So if you don't know, this is Jake Chervinsky, lawyer but not yours, head of policy at the Blockchain Association, advisor for Variant Fund, board of Fund DeFi, and tweets are his own, yada, yada, yada. We've covered him on multiple different occasions throughout the year because, well, even though he is the head of policy at the Blockchain Association, he's not really been that helpful with Ripple's lawsuit against the SEC, or rather, he's really been more on the SEC side when it comes to a lot of these parts, or more on Ethereum's side, which we'll get to in another part. However, he just let go a crazy rant over on his Twitter that got thousands upon thousands of likes and got a lot of people interested. So I thought it would be time to check this out. Because again, Ripple CTO and XRP co-creator, XP Ledger co-creator, David Schwartz says he's literally shocked to read this, so it surely is important. It's a long one, but it's important. And it all goes around the fact that the SEC just let go a statement that they're calling another 9 crypto securities, another 9 crypto securities, and that one of them got sued, I guess, which was where the complaint was in for, and partially also the fact that one representative earlier, Sherman, called out for all the exchanges that ever traded XRP to also be sued, right? Context. So, the SEC filed a complaint yesterday accusing 10 companies of violating the security laws, 9 digital asset issuers, and 1 exchange. None of them are defendants in this case. None of them will get their day in court. If this isn't regulation by enforcement, nothing is. Some background. The defendants are 3 individuals, former Coinbase employee, brother, and friend, who allegedly engaged in insider trading. In addition, the SEC suit, the Department of Justice indicted them for criminal wire fraud. You can read more about that here. To be clear, I'm not trying to excuse insider trading or fraud in any way. If those allegations are true, the defendants should be held accountable. But what we can and should condemn both the defendants' alleged conduct and the SEC's unjust tactics too. I'd like to make a quick remark. Coinbase actually went to kind of side with Ripple because right now they're telling the SEC, hey, you calling us out for listing these crypto asset securities, we don't really like that, and make rules instead of going for this enforcement approach. Make rules, which was yesterday's pretty cool news. The SEC alleges that the defendants committed securities fraud by using material, non-public information to trade ahead of Coinbase listing announcements. To establish jurisdiction, the SEC claims that the assets in question, 9 digital assets, are unregistered securities. And as far as I know, the SEC has never addressed these assets before. We learned the SEC's views on the fact patterns that it believes qualified them as securities for the first time in a federal complaint, rather than in guidance or rulemaking. This is regulation by enforcement. Now, it's not uncommon to learn for the first time that an enforcement agency has identified a violation when a complaint is filed. But typically, that happens when the agency files an action against a person who they think broke the law. This is very different. Here, the SEC isn't just accusing the defendants of breaking the law. The SEC also accuses 10 unrelated, uncharged companies of breaking the law, 9 for failure to register digital asset securities, and 1 for operating an unregistered national securities exchange. Again, I believe Coinbase, right? Despite leveling accusations against uncharged companies in public, the complaint is devoid of legal analysis, which again is a recurring theme in the Ripple v. SEC lawsuit as we've seen before. The SEC just makes a few allegations of fact and then summarily concludes that they satisfy Howey. But surely these are securities, you say. Well, again, you can kind of read these parts in depth as well. To win, the SEC must prove that one or more of these assets is a security. In a real sense, these companies are on trial too. But because the SEC didn't name them as defendants, they aren't allowed to defend themselves in court, which is something that I didn't think about before. With library and with XRP, at least they can defend themselves. Or in principle, this is deeply unfair and unjust. Specifically, if you think about what I said earlier, where the representative, Sherman, said, for example, that all the exchanges that ever listed XRP should be held accountable to and should be gone after. It's interesting because Ripple can kind of fight that battle, but for a lot of these other cryptos, well, they don't even really get a trial or anything. They just get a verdict from the SEC. It's just a stamp without any explanation as to why. On principle, deeply unfair and unjust. The individual defendants are now on the hook for litigating the security status of all 9 assets and for paying the costs of defending 9 separate sub-trials, which again is significant. To put it into perspective, Ripple paid $100 million, right? As you guys probably already know by now, for the Ripple v. SEC lawsuit in about a year and a half. And they're fighting one battle to basically say XP isn't a security. So these guys are basically being charged for being charged for trading in these digital asset securities, where the digital asset securities themselves can defend themselves. So them three, in this lawsuit basically have to pay for all these separate trials, right? Because, well, they have to defend and say, well, those weren't securities. Kind of. The amount of money that it would take is astronomical. I think at least $1 billion. If I were cynical, I'd say that's why the SEC did it this way. And that's honestly where my brain just ticked off. Even though I don't think Jake was the best when it comes to XRP, which we'll talk about in just a second. Don't worry about it. It's coming up in the next part. This is where things get really interesting. The SEC, time and time again, has gone for the weak hands, right? For the guys that can't really properly defend themselves, for the ones that stand out. With XRP/Ripple, they made a mistake. I think they thought Ripple would just give up easily. Again, we're already $100 million deep, and they sued him for $1.3 billion. With people like this, though, the ex-Coinbase employee, he can't, at least I'm assuming, right? He didn't do his insider trading that properly because he only made $1 million profit, I believe. He can't pay $1 billion to go after all this. So basically, in the case, the judge is going to just have to say, you know what? Yeah, SEC, you're right, because the other guy's like, kind of giving up. So he's basically forfeiting. You know what I mean? Forfeiting. So even though that doesn't necessarily conclude their securities, it does mean like, hey, the SEC charged them this way. He's not really going to fight it. Well, at least there's one case right now where the judge was like, yeah, you know what, SEC side, you're right on a lot of these points, unless they go into a really big, deep analysis. But why would they? You know, why would they go into a deep analysis? Why would the judge? If the other side is not going to pay the legal fees for their own team, who is the SEC fighting? So they just put up an allegation and the other side just accepts it because he can't fight it without $1 billion. Well, yeah, that's very difficult, right? Very, very difficult. Now, that's most likely why the SEC did it this way, because they knew they could get some sort of verdicts in. Maybe this is all for the XRP lawsuit to kind of get some more evidence in for the judge to consider, but okay. It's even worse than that, though. Some of these assets are currently listed on other trading platforms in the USA. Those platforms now have to wonder if they should delist the asset identified by the SEC to protect themselves from enforcement, right? Like Sherman was saying for XRP to be done, like a lot of Coinbase and others did preventatively. That's what we saw happen to XRP. A lot of exchanges delisted preemptively. And that's also why relist XRP is trending right now, because again, there's no verdict. Why take it off when the SEC just throws out an allegation? Nobody knows. Just by making unproven accusations in an enforcement action, the SEC can impose obligations on platforms and restrictions on companies of a type that usually requires regulation. Literally, regulation by enforcement. But unlike actual regulation, no opportunity to be heard. The SEC isn't supposed to act like this, accusing people of breaking the law without bringing an action. Guys, by the way, before I move on, if you guys are enjoying these videos or you think they're informative, make sure you press that like button or help share the video over on Twitter. It is greatly appreciated, and that's kind of all I can say about that. You know, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And if you want to trade crypto, you can use the links down below. Even though this is talking a little bit negatively about exchanges, I use these links down below for trading personally. But yeah. So the SEC isn't supposed to act like this from its website. Quote, it is the general policy of the SEC to conduct its investigations on a confidential basis to preserve the integrity of the investigative process, end quote. New quote, as well as to protect persons against whom unfounded charges may be made or whether the SEC determines that enforcement action is not necessary or appropriate, end quote. The SEC should keep its accusations confidential until and unless it sues the wrongdoer. This week, the SEC's enforcement director testified in Congress and refused to answer some questions for this very reason: confidentiality. For example, on when exchange actions, he said, "I can't talk about what matters we're looking at or not looking at." That's the same director who said last November that the SEC doesn't engage in regulation by enforcement, even though everyone in the bar and everyone in the industry believes that that is not accurate and never has been so, as one lawyer put it. I just want to quickly make clear here as well. This is way deeper than I'm making it out to be. The SEC's wrongdoing, I think this is going to be one very, very big iceberg that's going to crumble, so to speak, or going to melt. It's one very big house of cards, and a lot of things are going to go down really massively, really quickly the moment that the tower collapses, so to speak. That it's already starting to fall. The dominoes have started to tick. We're seeing only a very small part in a very, very big story, just so you guys understand that. Jake says even other high-ranking officials have come out to explain that this is a quintessential case of regulation by enforcement. Here's CFTC Commissioner Carolyn D. Pham, with a strong statement of the sort you don't often see from a leader of one agency to another. Statement of the sort you don't see very often from one leader of an agency to another. Read my statement on SEC v. Wahi, regulation by enforcement and CFTC authority. So in the world's federal note here, the case SEC v. Wahi is a striking example of regulation by enforcement. SEC complaint alleges that dozens of digital assets, including those that could be described as utility tokens and or certain tokens related to decentralized autonomous organizations, are securities, and we know there's no regulation for it, so it's kind of strange. Jake goes on, you might say the SEC is just doing its job, going after bad actors in crypto, and we should forgive defects like these for the greater good. Maybe that's what the SEC hopes you'll say. Don't. The Department of Justice charged wire, not securities fraud, and there's no purpose to the SEC piling on. At least, not if the goal is to see the bad actors punished and justice done. Instead, this appears to be another effort by the SEC to expand its own regulatory authority over crypto markets by enforcement, without doing the hard work of proving that the security laws apply. It's also worth noting that one of the 10 uncharged companies has already come forward to aggressively challenge the SEC's unproven accusations. Read Coinbase's chief legal officer pointed an astute response to the case here. This is Coinbase's response. Coinbase does not list securities, end of story. It's sad, but not surprising to see the SEC continue its unfair attacks on crypto. And as I said, we knew the SEC planned to ramp up enforcement this year, all right? They asked for a couple $2 billion to do so. So I assume this is only the beginning. I hope their next move won't be so unfair and unjust. And that's kind of where I get kind of goosebumps off of this. I get kind of afraid. You can see the SEC being trending. I honestly expect this is going to get really, really far. What I mean with that is that this is going to be a significant battle that's all of a sudden going to be all over, and the SEC is just going to be like, you know what? Today we sued 951 cryptos, right? Or something like that. Santiago said one would almost recommend the formation of an association to identify these overreaches, coordinate industry counter-reaction, and seek regulatory level playing field wherein assets are properly classified and overseen. Maybe with Ripple and Library and case defendants, just a thought. Well, we already knew that Empower US is going after the SEC with their FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act, and it's being kind of cumbersome. And in the Ripple v. SEC lawsuit, everything is being kind of cumbersome. All I can say about it is the SEC is trying their best. I think this is just the start. We have to stop them now, as long as we still have the chance, because we still have the chance to do so. Eventually, it's all going to become so much worse, I think. But hey, that's the story for right now. That's the scoop. That's the story. Wanted to get this out to you guys as soon as possible. And damn, this is crazy, huh? I don't know what else to make of it. This is so sad to see. It's crazy, but it is the way that it is. So again, guys, if you enjoyed the update, I guess, even though it's not fun news, make sure you press that like button just to help out the video and share this as much as possible. This overreach is crazy. Honestly, mind-boggling. Crazy.